When you're ready.
The topic I looked into this year was the increase of stress in the profession of teaching. I want to begin with a quote that well describes what many believe to be the gift of education, a better future. Spoken by Malcolm X, a minister and major leader of the civil rights movement. He once said, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today." It is nothing new to say that the system of our world relies on effective education of future generations. This came into play in my life in the fall of 2022 when forming the question I would look to answer over the course of the next 9 months. I wanted to make sure that the question I chose to pursue further dug into the teachers in my community, particularly those at my school. My original question was centered around comparing what departments' stress levels to one another. The exact question stating, what department at my school experiences the highest levels of stress? I plan to accomplish this by comparing a few common activities highlighted in a teacher's day, anything from lesson planning to faculty meetings, and even teaching lessons themselves. In the end, however, I had to move away from this question and the idea as I struggled to find an effective and affordable way to track the difference in a department's heart rate from one another. After further research and my own experience of wearing a smartwatch, I realized that I could use smartwatches that teachers and faculty wear day to day. With the change in my procedure, the question became, are everyday smartwatches an effective way to track the stress of staff and faculty at my school through heart rate? I originally selected 4 different common brands of smartwatches to allow in my experiment: Apple, Fitbit, Garmin, and Samsung. This research question also allowed my subject pool to widen to more than just teachers to be evaluated. Overall, the goal of this question was to be able to identify if the smartwatches that are commonly worn by teachers at the school can effectively track heart rate. By knowing their heart rate, I was hoping to identify when there was a rise in heart rate indicating stress, and then compare that to the information I would also collect throughout their day, including a survey of stress as along with a daily schedule. During the course of prepping for this experiment for the question, I found it extremely difficult to have a collective way to collect heart rate from each device, while still respecting the individual's privacy. Due to this factor, I was unable to keep my question as it stood. After identifying a way to isolate each subject's heart rate data and transfer it to a different device, the only available smartwatch that could do this was Apple branded. By only allowing Apple Watches available to participate in the study, my subject pool smalled. After realizing this restriction, I decided to alter my question to allow a broader range of data to be collected. It was determined that a school-wide survey would be added to the study, creating a 2-part experiment. This allowed my final question to stand as, what are the factors causing stress for teachers at my school? And are everyday smartwatches an effective way to track this stress through heart rate? This study in its entirety is a qualitative multi-method investigation designed to generate both an understanding of teachers' stress levels school-wide as well as a second experiment that focuses on the ability to track heart rate through smartwatches to identify stress. To fill the research gap at hand, conducting a sample within the school community was vital. Furthermore, making sure that both a broad perspective and in-depth look were represented in the data collection brought 2 separate experiments to take place. First, a randomized experiment of the teacher population at the school, allowing patterns and hypotheses to form. Second, a smaller experiment took place, allowing to look at a closer look at the effectiveness of tracking stress from teachers through heart rate on smartwatches. The first part of my experiment took place in a questionnaire sent out to all teachers at my school. In total, there were 34 teachers who voluntarily completed the survey. To allow each teacher anonymity, no names or emails were collected during the survey. Gender and age were the 2 most important pieces of information for each subject. The percentage of gender in the sample was 50-50, 17 males and 17 females, allowing the survey to be balanced when looking at gender. Based on the survey method used, there was a voluntary response bias, allowing the possibility for those who have responded have a prior interest in teacher stress. This deems the survey to not be a random sample, but rather to be identified as a voluntary response sample. Emma L. Turner, in a dissertation for Eastern Tennessee State University, created this survey to complete the research of her own. This survey includes 51 questions, and each teacher ranks on a scale from no stress to extreme stress the 51 factors provided. This is the survey that I used. The second study conducted began with a form that was sent out to all teachers at my school. Looking at our responses, 4 teachers were selected that fit the parameters for this study. The 2 main qualifications that needed to be addressed were first, that the teacher experienced some form of stress in their everyday lives, and second, that they had some form of smartwatch, in this case, Apple. It was vital for me to gain access to their smartwatch, and it needed to be Apple, as it allowed me to effectively get information from their watch onto my computer. This also allowed me to still respect the privacy of each subject. This was made possible through an app called Simple Health CSV, created by Eric Walter. This allowed only specific data to be selected from a time range and exported from each individual's Apple Watch to their health app onto the CSV app, and then onto my computer for further analysis. Due to these limiting circumstances, a balanced representation of gender was not able to occur in this part of the experiment. All 4 subjects that fit the criteria and were willing to participate were male. Each subject's trial lasted 4 days, allowing each individual to teach and experience all 8 classes at least twice. The goal of each trial was to capture a full week of school starting Monday and ending Thursday or Friday. At the end of each trial day, a survey was sent out along with a spreadsheet reporting the levels of stress they experienced throughout the day and their daily schedule. After all 4 trials were completed and all data from the pertaining days were collected through the CSV app and transferred over to begin analysis. From all the data collected from the teacher questionnaire sent out, and after being categorized by gender and age, each teacher's score was calculated. Each teacher was scored on a scale from 0 to 4. 0 representing no stress, 1 representing mild stress, 2 representing moderate stress, 3 representing much stress, and 4 representing extreme stress. Of the 34 teachers that responded, the mean level of stress was 1.33, indicating that on average, teachers at this school experience mild to moderate stress in their current position. The top scoring factors out of the 51 categories that they ranked were too much work to do, poorly motivated students, not having enough time to do work, lack of time for grading, and monitoring of student behavior. Something unique that was revealed during my data analysis of this teacher survey was the impact that gender had on stress. Of the 51 different factors ranked by teachers of stress, only 6 of those did men score higher than women. Of the 6, I identified 4 that could be argued to align with traditional gender roles. Those being inadequate salary, poor promotion opportunities, attitudes and behaviors of principal, and poor career structure. Madeline Hyman of the University of Michigan says, the characterization of men and women that compromise descriptive gender stereotypes are remarkably consistent, that they have been shown to be consistent across all cultures. To clarify, descriptive gender stereotypes can be described as what men and women are like, where prescriptive gender stereotypes are how men and women should be like. These prescriptive stereotypes are things that can be seen to happen to people every day. Of the list, Hyman provides the different main gender stereotypes. All 4 of the categories I've listed can fall into at least one of those. Giving reason as to why male teachers felt more stress in these categories can also be found in society's traditional expectations of an American family. In most occurrences, it is expected for the father or the man of the family to be the breadwinner of the household. Teaching is a historically female-heavy field, and on the lower end of the spectrum salary-wise. This can also show support as to why these 4 particular factors were shown to bring more stress to men than women. The smartwatch study conducted is finalized as an inconclusive experiment. This was due to a multitude of reasons. Mainly due to the fact that it was nearly next to impossible to accurately and correctly identify moments of stress. Another factor that led to this conclusion was the lack of reports of daily stress from teachers. Between the 4 different teachers that participated in this experiment and the 16 collective days that were looked at, only 12 moments of stress were recorded. Of those 12, only 4 showed a change of heart rate, as you can see here, as an example, that were large enough to look into further. However, after looking into all 4 of those moments, not one of them were the heart rate high enough where we could ever classify confidently that there was a correlation between heart rate and stress. Limitations. First of all statistical tests that were completed for both methods, all conditions were never met. Neither experiment was formatted in a random sample, rather a voluntary response sample, as previously mentioned. Although this condition was not met, the study continued as it was the only option. If the question were to be asked again, a random sample could be possible by randomly selecting teachers at my school and only allowing those teachers or requiring those teachers to participate. The second condition, looking at to see if the sample size is large enough compared to the larger group, was not always met. This was mainly in fault of the fact that a surprisingly low amount of teachers at this school were willing to participate. Although this condition was not always met, again, we continued as it was the only option. If the study were to be redone, a possible way to avoid this could include selecting additional schools to be involved or acquiring larger portions of teachers at this school to participate. A final limitation was a human limitation. When working with human subjects, there is always a cause for error. In my case, the largest limitation that I found with humans was the difference in perception of stress. Each person experiences a mockdom of stress related to the questions asked. However, the results are colored by each of their relative experiences. One's experience of a 4 is relative to what 4 means to them. Each person routinely experiences stress in their given vocation to which they have become adapted. Variation between participants' experiences related to threshold for stress and how their unique experiences are colored by their sensitivities and adaptation. At the end of my exploration of the topic of teacher stress, I can say that teachers at my school experience mild to moderate stress in their current profession. The top factors causing this stress being too much work to do, poorly motivated students, not having enough time to do the work, lack of time for grading, and constant monitoring of student behavior. Lastly, I can say that Apple smartwatches are not shown to be an effective way to monitor stress strictly through heart rate in the way that I did. This was my presentation on teacher stress, and here are my sources.
I'll add a clap track to that.
How did the choices you made when designing or implementing your research method impact your process?
I would say at the beginning of deciding what I was going to do, it negatively impacted my research process. I think not a lot of the subjects that I looked into deeply enough, and in the long run that deeply impacted negatively my process.
Okay. How do your findings provide directions for future research?
Well, at least at my school, the findings that I have found offer an insight to administration about where their faculty and staff experience stress in their day-to-day lives, if that was something that they were willing and wanted to look into. And for all future schools, a similar study could be conducted along with the teacher questionnaire that I used could be used at other schools as well.
Okay. What was the most important research skill you developed as a result of this process, and how might you apply it to your future endeavors?
I would definitely say something along the lines of persistence. Something I've learned during this process in these 9 months is human subjects are very difficult to work with, simply because everyone's different and everyone has a lot going on in their lives, and not every human is different in themselves. And I would say persistence and not giving up when I had a low amount of people that were willing to participate or low responses on my questionnaire was something that I deeply had to work on and not let that affect me too much. And I would say that I would use that in my future endeavors, not only in college when working with different professionals in the field that I want to go into, but also for the rest of life. I think persistence is a good thing to just keep.
Okay.